Hey everybody, it's Taylor here from Dames on Mode, and today I am going to pack for my trip to Venice. Yay! So I'm heading off to Venice for Carnivale in a few days, and so today I'm going to start actually packing for my trip. So I've mostly completed all my sewing. I have a few little tiny hand projects that I'll bring along with me, but I have the bulk of my sewing done, so I'm going to start packing. I actually get more questions about this than any other part of our Carnival trip that we did last year, which is how do you get all this stuff somewhere? How do you travel with all these clothes? How do you pack for this? So it is a big concern, and I definitely understand why people are curious about it. So today I'm just going to share my packing methods, what I'm doing, and some of my tips and tricks to make things go a little bit easier, and hopefully everything will fit. Boy, I'm bringing a lot this year, a lot more than last year, so it's going to be, fingers crossed, we'll make sure this works. Now, I do have two really large bags with me this year. I have one here and there's one just off camera over there. Last year I packed with one of these large bags and then one, what I would call like a standard size American roll-on carry-on bag, which is here. So this is the kind of thing that you see like every American take as their carry-on bag. But last year we flew Lufthansa, which was a great airline. We had a wonderful experience, but they did not mess around with carry-on requirements. When we checked in, they took out a little tape measure, they measured that bag, and they said, no, too big. So it got checked. And the whole reason I had a carry-on was because I was hoping to avoid having to pay for two checked bags, but in the end I had to do it anyway. So this year I'm just going to pack two big bags, I'll have a small carry-on, and hopefully that'll give me a little bit more breathing room because you know, you're going to have to pay for international baggage fees. It sucks, but it's just part of what one of these trips is. So if you're going to be traveling for a long time, I would recommend budgeting for two checked bags. It's just going to be a lot easier that way. I do have all of my modern clothes already packed in a small duffel-sized carry-on, which will be my carry-on bag. So everything you see going into these two suitcases is just my historical clothing. I don't have my modern stuff in here. I have a few things that I would like to bring, like I'd like to bring an extra sweater, maybe like a modern pair of hat and gloves just for walking around. We'll see if I have room for those once I fit them in, but all of my other stuff is already packed at home to make sure I didn't need to dedicate any of my historical packing room to my modern clothing. One thing to remember is that if you're going on a historical trip, you've got to think historically, so I don't have a lot of modern clothes with me. I basically brought like 3 dresses and 6 pairs of leggings, and I'll just wear them over and over again. We do have a washing machine in the apartment we rented, so we have some opportunity to clean our clothes if we need to, but that's why I'm dedicating, 90% of my packing space to the costumes and the costumes alone. So my first tip for packing for a trip like this is number 1, pack early. It is Thursday today and I'm not leaving until Sunday, so I am not putting this off to the last minute. If I have some sort of catastrophe that I have way overmade or just don't have the room, it'll give me some time to actually stop and think about it instead of having some sort of panic right before I leave for the airport on Sunday morning. So I'm packing early, which means that I can do this leisurely, I can take my time, and I can also double check and triple check my list to make sure that I have not forgotten anything. I certainly don't want to leave an item of my costume out, so I'm going to just give myself plenty of time to really think about it, to keep going back through in my head. Did I remember to pack that? Was there something else I needed? And also at this time I can realize that if there's some catastrophic piece of my costume that is going to be awful if I don't have it, then I have given myself a couple of days to try and make something, to try and figure out a way that I can make it happen, so I'm not going to be surprised with anything last minute, which is going to make my mental health leaving for this trip much better. It'll be great to have this taken off of my list and ready to go. Okay, tip number 2 is make exhaustive lists. I am really forgetful. I don't have a good time with keeping track of things, so I have made really elaborate lists for all my costumes, and they say everything. They have what the item is, even down to little detailed things. I need a pair of stockings here, I need the jewelry here, things that you would think you aren't going to forget. but you definitely need to have those listed. And I also have them listed with multiple costumes. So for example, I have stays that are going with my mantua. I've also listed those stays with the 2 other costumes I'm going to wear them with, because that just means that I'm triple checking the fact that I have that item with me. I'm not going to let myself say, oh, I'll remember I've packed that, or more importantly, I'll remember to pack that, because I know myself and I know that I will not remember to pack that thing, and I don't want to figure out that I've left it behind once I get to Venice. So I have very, very long, detailed lists of every costume and everything that goes with them. And I have another thing here on my list, which is big numbers that say 1, 2, 3, etc. And that's because I have ranked my costumes in the order of importance that I need them. Because I'm not certain that everything is going to fit in my suitcase, I have actually sat down and said, okay, this is the most important costume to me, second most, all the way down to least important, things that I can either are just there for fun, sort of extra things I wanted to bring along, or they're costumes for parties, but I have something else I could wear if it comes down to that. So for example, the very last costume on my list is like an 18th century shepherdess costume for a Marie Antoinette themed party, but I already have another 18th century pink and green thing that I'm bringing, so I could, if it comes down to it, wear that dress instead of my shepherdess costume. But if I have the room for it, then I'll certainly take it. But this way I'm not going to get to the end of the list and go, oh my God, this really critical thing hasn't been packed yet, and then have that be something that I have to figure out how I'm going to get to Venice. So before I got stressed about it, I went ahead and ranked all of my pieces from most important to least important, and I'll start by packing those most important costumes. All right, here we're going to start for good. The number 1 item on my list is my 1710s mantua. It's also one of my biggest costumes, so I'm glad that it's really important to me, because it'll help to kind of give me an idea of where I'm going for this. I think that's the one I have that takes up the most room. It's got like the most fabric, the most volume, all sorts of accoutrements that go with it. So I'm going to start with that one, and then we'll go ahead and go. Here I have all the random bits of my mantua that are not the gown, like the stays and the stomacher and a fan, the belt, petticoat, all the stuff that goes with it. So I'm going to put all this stuff sort of in a pile, so I have it right here, and then I'll grab the petticoat and the dress themselves. The real key to fitting everything in is to roll your garments. Through some kind of physics-defying witchcraft, rolled clothing takes up way less space than folded garments. I don't know how it works, but I use this trick for my modern packing too. So when I'm packing costumes, I roll everything. Yes, you will still get wrinkles, but I don't think those are avoidable. I just plan to spend some time ironing when I get there. Just try and do your best to keep the fabrics as flat as possible, and you'll actually be surprised by how neat they are when you unpack them. You'll also see I'm doing things like stuffing the shoes with stockings. This not only helps your shoes keep their shape, but you're also using up space that would otherwise be wasted. I also think about where I'm placing all the different items in the suitcase based on if they're going to be upside down or not. So I have like my heavier items like my shoes, my petticoats, stuff that can get kind of crushed down at the bottom. And then I have my more delicate stuff like the lace sleeves. I have my fan and my stomacher and stuff up here, because when I'm carrying the suitcase upright, there's not going to be a lot of pressure on these. The stuff down here can kind of take the extra weight, while the stuff up here is a little bit more delicate. So I try to think about where they are in the suitcase. All right, now that my mantua is done, I have gone through and I have checked everything off the list here, with the exception of my jewelry, and that's because I'm going to pack my jewelry separately, which I will tell you about at the end of this video. But I've also then gone through and counted off all the places where parts of this costume are going to go to other ones.
So I have a pink and green 18th century dress that's going to share the stays, the puffer petticoat, the pocket. So this way, as I'm going along, I'm sort of checking off where else I've used these items, and that'll help me to keep track of them in the future. This is my 1490s Venetian gown, which has a huge amount of fabric. It's 3 panels wide and has a crazy train on it, but it becomes amazingly compact when you take some time to carefully fold it and compress the fabric. It fits in very easily once I get it nicely folded up. Okay, so now I've got my 2 largest, most fabric consuming costumes, my 1710s Mantua and my 1490s Venetian gowns. So these were the 2 behemoths of my plans. So everything else should be pretty small. One thing I didn't mention in here is that the reason that I'm packing all of the costumes together at once, so that I have not only the costumes but also all the other things that go with them, is for 2 reasons. One, it's just to help keep everything organized so I know I'm not forgetting everything, but also it means, perish the thought, if one of these suitcases goes missing, I'll at least have complete costumes here in one suitcase. So I'm not having the gown in one costume or one suitcase, but then the stays for that gown in another one, because if one of those goes missing, then suddenly the whole costume is ruined. At least this way, if I'm sure it's not going to happen, but if it does happen, I will have a few costumes with me that I know I can wear. One thing that I do pack totally in its own separate box is my box of miscellaneous hair pieces. I don't wear full wigs, but I do wear things that I can use to sort of style my own hair over. And these are all from Jenny LaFleur, and I'll link to her shop in the comments here. But I have like my little buckle curls, I have my little Regency ringlets. Underneath here I have my hedgehog topper. So I sort of like to keep all of my hair stuff together, because not only do I know where to find it, but also because it's in this separate box, I know that everything's going to be protected when it's actually in my suitcase and it won't get crushed too much. One of the few items that I'm feeling a little bit nervous about is my white satin 1790s gown. Because not only is it just the most beautiful, fabulous, gorgeous fabric, but I also have not photographed it even once, so I'm really nervous that something's going to happen to it. So I'm actually going to wrap this piece in a piece of clean white cotton just from my fabric stash to sort of protect it just a little bit more. Okay, great news. I am almost entirely finished with packing, and I still have enough extra room that I think I can bring along my Shepherdess costume, which was one of my last sort of, oh, maybe I can make this. So yay, I'm really excited because, but boy, it just fits. So I was really pushing it. I'm glad I didn't have anything else with me.
All right, I got everything packed. Everything I need is in these 2 bags, with the exception of a small bag of handwork that I'll bring so I can sew on the plane, and my everyday clothes, which are also going to be in a small carry-on bag. And other than that, here's Venice. Woo! So I made a list of everything that I packed into these 2 suitcases. So here's what I've got: 4 corsets, 5 dresses, 3 Spencer's / jacket things, 9 petticoats, 5 shifts, 6 pairs of stockings, 6 pairs of shoes, 1 shirt, 4 random hair things like hedgehog pads, curls, that sort of thing, 3 different types of underpinnings, so like pocket hoops, false rumps, a robe, a peignoir, a cloak, 2 capes, a muff, and 24 miscellaneous things, which is like stomachers, caps, scarves, belts, that sort of thing. So that's boy, that's a lot of stuff. I'm pretty impressed it all fit in there. All right.
Jewelry packing. I'm actually doing this last because this jewelry will come along with me in my carry-on instead of being checked. And this is how I travel with my large amount of jewelry when I go on costuming trips. I start out with a kitchen towel that is lint-free. Otherwise, the little tines can grab off little threads, which are very annoying to pick out. So you don't want to use something that's like terry cloth or really fluffy. And then I start laying out my jewelry on the towel. The trick here is to not let anything touch. You may need to switch out to a larger towel or use 2, depending on how much jewelry you have. And then once you have it all laid out, you just gently start rolling the jewelry into the towel. Make sure you're covering the last piece before you capture the next piece. This keeps everything from rubbing against each other and tangling or damaging the other pieces. Once you have the roll all done, secured in the middle with a tied ribbon and on the edges with hair ties to keep everything from sliding out. If you want more protection, you can wrap this whole thing in another fluffier towel. Now make sure that you have this in an accessible place in your bag because TSA will be very interested, and I can assure you this thing looks crazy on an x-ray. I usually unpack this from my bag and put it by itself in the scanner. Just be prepared for some attention from TSA with this item.
If you are watching this video sometime around the last week of February in 2020, then check out my Instagram page where I will be posting all sorts of pictures and videos from our trip to Venice. You can find that at Instagram at Dames a la Mode, all underscored, and of course I'll link to it down below in the notes. If you're watching this video after the last week of February 2020, then check out my other videos on my channel where I'll post lots of videos from our trip to Venice so you can see the beautiful costumes we wore, the adventures that we got up to, and just admire a lovely city. You can subscribe down below. Thanks so much, everyone!